My name is William Lesterhouse. I'm from Mattawan, Michigan, and I have an antique shop. No, this was Jack's ring. This was Jack, my uncle's first lover, and he gave me this ring. And when I first was come out, a turquoise ring like this, they wore because it was a sign that you were gay, and a pinky ring was a sign that you were gay. So I've always wore these because I'm gay and I don't give a damn. Who cares? But, I was born in 1935, right after the Depression. I was born in Bronson Hospital, and Mother was in there for 5 days, and the cost was $26 for 5 days at the hospital. Can you imagine how times have changed? I have two sisters, but we're all far apart. My sister in the middle, she's 10 years younger than I am, and my youngest sister is 17 years younger than I am. So we were all oopses. Mother and Dad weren't really planning. I was an oops in the first place. They had to get married. They were 19 years old. Well, my dad was a woman chaser, and I think he got my mother pregnant and just left her sit there with me, and we had nothing. Mother had me, and I was all she had, and had a wonderful mother. She was absolutely wonderful. But my dad, I hardly knew I had a dad. He wasn't around much. When I was 10 years old is when my other sister was born, and my dad was drafted into the Navy, I think a couple of days after she was born, and Mother and I, we just sort of survived in a crappy old house, and times were very, very lean. Everything was rationed and everything was poor, and I mean, we just, gasoline, sugar, butter, everything, crazy things that we take for granted today were all rationed and hard to get. Tires and anything you want to mention, everybody suffered from the war years. I lived the farthest away from the school of any kids in the whole school system, I guess. And well, there weren't many kids in the neighborhood that were my age. There wasn't much. I had cousins. I had Barb, Dolores, and Don. They lived in Parchment, and they were my main kids that I played with. I went to Central High School and started in the 10th grade at Chenery. Central High School at that time. Oh, I hated school, and I was a terrible student. It was the worst part of my whole life, school. Chenery and his wife used to wander up and down the halls. They both taught there. He taught dramatics, and I don't know what she taught. But they held hands and walked around like they were teenagers in the rest of the school. When I was such a poor person and we had nothing, never would I've ever thought I could associate with people who were really prominent or had money or class or nothing. I thought I would probably just always be that way, but when I got into the antiques, I just changed all over the place. And my uncle was an antique dealer. He got me interested in antiques when I was young. I would collect little things and so on. Then he managed a big antique show in Chicago, and we would go spring and fall to the show while I was in high school. And I started seeing the really wonderful antiques and collecting more stuff. And when I got out of high school, my dad says, now you got to start selling this junk around here. Had a couple other jobs that were interesting. I worked mornings in a flower shop from 8 till noon, throwing together funeral arrangements. And I worked, well, my first job when my dad said, you got to go out and get a job, I went to the Sutherland Paper Company, and Bill Lawrence was the man who interviewed me. I got to know him and his wife very well later on in life. But he said, Lesterhouse is your name? I said, yes. He said, do you know Fred Lesterhouse? I said, that's my grandfather. He says, you can go to work at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I was never so disappointed in my life because I didn't want to go to the paper mill at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But anyway, I worked there a few years and learned how everything there is to know about paper from bottom to top. And was probably some decent experience, but then I was going to be drafted into the military, and that was quite a dramatic thing. There was, I of course checked the box because I was gay, and the first time that we had to go over there, they paired me up with another kid from high school that was a really rich kid and popular, and I was nobody. But we had to sleep together in a hotel in Detroit, and I think he probably checked the box too, and they wanted to find out what we would do if we slept together, I guess, I don't know. But anyway, did that, and then they sent me back home, and then they called me, and that's when I quit my job at the paper mill and was going to admit me into the military. And there again, they paired me up with another fellow that probably checked the box. We slept overnight together in the hotel. Me being nervous as I don't know what, because I was sleeping with another strange guy that you weren't used to. But anyway, we had to stay overnight, and we had showers, and be in a shower room with 100 or more guys all nude was just for somebody like me. But anyway, it was. But anyway, they then put us all in a big room where they would call off your name, and then you'd assign you to where they were going to send you. Till finally, myself and this other fellow that I slept with were the only two left in the whole big room. And they finally called our names off and took us up, and they said, "Here's your bus ticket back home. We don't want you." And so I was happy, because I don't want to go in the dumb military in the first place. Well, in the beginning, I really was kind of really closet queen, I guess, because I knew gay fellas. When I got out of high school, I started going to auction sales, and I learned that I was just as good as a lot of other people. People that went to the auction sales every Saturday, you got to know them real well. And Mr. and Mrs. Harding, that owned the Harding stores, were friends who you got to know real well because they liked antiques. The Roningans were other people who owned a business in Kalamazoo. They were got to be good friends. And I knew then that I was just as good as anybody else, and that nobody cared if I was gay or straight or what the hell I was. And then there was also another man in Battle Creek that was very, very well to do. He owned theaters, and they entertained and had big antique parties, and get invited to them, and you get to meet all sorts of people that were way above my level in life, being so poor and bashful and everything in my life. So I really started living when I got out of high school. I was just withered up nothing all the way through school. And, in high school, one of the most popular fellas, he was a magician, and he used to give assemblies and things, and I was so naive in high school that he asked me to go to a gay party with him one time, and I just was shocked. I mean, I was nowhere ready to go to a gay party, but there was one kid in high school that I was really had the hots for, because we were in gym class together, and we'd have to change our clothes and dress down to nothing and stand and look at each other and so on, but it never got beyond that. I lived on the extreme north end of town, and he lived down in Washington Square. And he had two other friends that I'm sure the three of them were gay, but he later on got married, and he died before he was very much older. He had asthma and stuff, but lost contact with him. But I went through a few mad love affairs of wanting somebody very badly, and nothing ever happened. Well, then Mrs. Causey, she had household sales, and she had a household sale for two gay fellas that were breaking up, and she was selling everything, and She used to talk to in front of me with other ladies. Oh, she said, these young guys come in and they come in pairs and they go off upstairs and come back giggling and having fun. And I said, gee, can I go help you on this sale with meeting some of these people? So anyway, I went and helped her with the sale and got to meet Dwayne and Ford, that were the two we get, and got to know, and then really got to be known well in amongst all of a bunch of the gay people and more of a gay life. And I got this job at Flip's Flower Shop doing flowers. And back in the paper mill, I was making $1.79 an hour. And then when I went to the flower shop, I was probably making about the same amount of money, to just show how wages have skyrocketed from when I was young. First job I had was working in a gift shop and flower shop, Lesterhouse it was called, and that was 50 cents an hour. I worked 4 hours an evening there from 5 until 9, had full charge of the shop myself. But then Mrs. Vermeulen was a customer, and she liked me, and she told her husband, you ought to call Bill and give him a job working in the store doing something. And so he called and said he wanted to give me a job. And it was run by two brothers, Les Vermeulen and Harold Vermeulen. Harold was really the man who owned the store, and his brother worked with him. And I got to be really good friends with Les Vermeulen, and we worked together a lot because I arranged the furniture on the floor and installed draperies in homes for customers, that the design part of the store. And so finally Harold come to me and called me to the office and said he guessed maybe they were kind of done with me working for him. And I said, good, I'll work until the first of the year when I get my Christmas bonus. That's when I got to know Mrs. Shakespeare, and she was the one who, she had dramatic draperies, and she would get them off the track and call the place and say, send that man over. And she'd have a glass of scotch waiting for me and try and encourage me to stay the weekend. One day she said, Henry won't be home for the weekend, you can just stay. Being gay, I thought, oh my God, she was a French bathing suit model. And in Paris, the lowest grade model you can be is a bathing suit model, because you're kind of beautiful, but not much of a lady. So it was a lot of interesting experiences I've had all through the years. Women used to invite me to go to lunch, and I think that was an invitation to have sex, probably, because various women would invite me to go to lunch. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my life was I didn't realize that Irving Gilmore was gay. And he came when I was pretty young, and he wanted to know, did I have a dress I would loan him that he could go to a Halloween party? And I said, no, why don't you go down to the store and take something off the rack and wear it and take it back and put it in the morning, nobody will ever know the difference. And had I have been smart, I'd have gotten to know Irving Gilmore a whole lot better. He used to come in the shop and always say, shake my hand and say, do you remember me? I'm Irving Gilmore. And of course I knew who he was exactly, he knew who he was. And Miss Volderauer was a good friend, and she called one day and she said, let's go to the park club for dinner. And it was a night when it's snowing, and we were the only three people, Mrs. Volderauer and Irving Gilmore and I. And we sat and visited and had talk about various people that I knew through the people that I'd come in contact with and so on. And Fred, he would come in the store and shake my hand. He says, I'm your friend, Irving Gilmore. He never asked, did I remember him again? So, but he was supposed to marry my friend Eleanor Austin when she was young and he was young. Her mother and his mother were good friends, and they decided that Eleanor should marry him. And he stood her up at the altar. They had all the Gilmores and the Upjohns and the fancy people at the church, and he stood her up, and he said do anything his mother told him to, but he was gay and he wouldn't get married. So that was, I found that out much later. That was, Eleanor had been a madam in Kalamazoo, a really high-priced, fancy madam. Her mother encouraged her to take care of the wealthy men in town for a big price. We had a driveway between two houses. One was the antique shop, and I lived with my parents in the other one. And my dad and grandfather were sitting there, and she would come and blow the horn in the driveway, and Grandpa said, "Who in the hell is that out there blowing their horn?" And Dad says, "Oh, it's Eleanor Austin." Eleanor Austin, he says, "What in the hell is she doing coming to see Bill? She had the most expensive house in Kalamazoo, and I was a young guy. Nobody could afford her." And here he thought we was going having sex with the old girl. But we did all kinds of things. We went to New York and Chicago and out to eat all the time. And I learned an awful lot about all the people in town and all of the fun. She was a wonderful, wonderful friend. But we went to the Petite Gourmet in Chicago. That's right by the water tower. And she always had to have scintillating conversation. And she, the Stewarts in Kalamazoo, Judge Stewart and his family were all gay. And they were good friends of hers, and I knew them. And so to be having scintillating conversation, she said, "Oh, you know, that's the terrible thing about the Stewarts." And I said, "Oh, really?" She said, "They're all queer," kind of loud so everybody in the restaurant could hear. So she loved to get the attention of everybody that she could. And it was all a bunch of gay guys in there eating their lunch, and the forks were dropping all over the place. And they thought, this old lady with this gay young guy, what the hell are they doing here? But she had all the attention. She was great at getting the attention. We went to the Ford Museum to a antiques forum quite regularly when I was younger with the people. And we stayed at the Dearborn Inn, and she called on my phone and said, "I'm ready, Bill, come, we'll go." And I opened the door, and she had on her flapper outfit that Irving Gilmore was to marry her, and that was her going away outfit for that. And so this was a special occasion, so she was all dressed up. And the elevator opened, and people kind of looked, "Oh, who are these people?" And then she'd smile graciously and say hello. And so we sat there in the lobby a little bit, and then an old school bus loaded on us, and you took you across the street to the Lovett Hall. And we got off the bus, and some woman come to me. She says, "You're the most interesting couple here." We were, but she loved getting the attention of everybody and anybody. She wound up, she was in a nursing home, and she had around-the-clock nurses with her in the nursing home. And I had to go in every afternoon at 2 or 2:30 or something or another and have a glass of sherry with her and visit with her. And one day she called and she says, "Bill," she said, "I'm going to go home today." She said, "Come and get me." So I go get her, and the nurses were all running around, and I said, "We're going to leave." "No," they said, she can't leave. Nobody signed over that no doctors, nobody signed that she can leave. And they said, if I would sign for her, they would be so happy to get rid of her that they would let her go. So I loaded her in the wheelchair. Nobody would help me because I was taking her out of there. And her round-the-clock nurse was with us, and I got her loaded in the car, and the nurse in the back seat, and we got down on South Street where she lived, and there was a fraternity house, and boys out playing sweaty in the middle of the street playing ball. And she says, "Oh God, Bill," she says, "we're in luck." And I says, "We are." She says, "I go get me a couple of those young boys." And so I go get two, and they come up to the car, and she says, "Can you boys carry me in the house?" So they made how they did with her arms, and she held her and then put her arms around them, and she carried them in the house. And they put her on her bed, and she says, "Oh, at least I'm home." And she lasted about a week with her round-the-clock nurse, and she gave up, and it was the end. When I moved out here, Judd Wise lived across the street, and he said, "Oh, you should go to the rest area down there, I-94. And so I started going to the rest area, and you'd meet all kinds of guys, and a lot of them would be what Bob Mead used to call door trade. They'd meet you, and then they'd come back for more whenever they were going, passing through. And I even had a state cop come to the door one day, and he said, they're going to raid that place down there. He says, and I know that you go down there because he says, I partied with you down there. And they were always after, police didn't have nothing better to do, so they go pick on the gay people, I guess. But Bob Miedema, he was a big one too that would go to the rest area all the time. And he got arrested at the one out 131, and he was with a young college fellow. I guess they gave him a blowjob or something, whatever they were doing. But they both got taken to the police department, and Bob always had a lot of money with him. He had enough money with him to bail them both out of jail right away. And when he was here one night, and I used to get magazines that were gay guys in them, pictures, and he started screaming and yelling. He says, "Oh my God, here's a picture of that guy that I got arrested with." But such riotous things that always happen to us. Bronson Park downtown, they used to go cruise the park, and if somebody offered to take you for ice cream, if you were going to go get ice cream, that meant you were going to go have sex somewhere, and that was a signal that you were interested in somebody. And they were cruising Bronson Park when I was younger too. I never really went down there, hardly ever once. I never went home with anybody there from there. But Sangren Hall at Western was another place where all of the college guys used to go and meet. Vincent had a house in Schoolcraft where he would have people over all the time and parties and this and that and everything. And then later, I had the place before I moved here, would have parties and people over all the time. And on Mondays evenings, everybody would come to my place and we have drinks and talk about what everybody had done over the weekend or who they met or what they did or whatever. And Vincent said I was the only person who ever reciprocated and had him back for parties because they all just came out to his place for parties. Oh, it's a lot of fun, and I've met a lot of interesting people. I mean, a lot of wives of CEOs, and Leon Buckout was a good friend. He was a commercial artist, and he was also gay. He was married when I first met him. The antique shops is where I met an awful lot of people when I was young. And he got a divorce. He ran off with the minister of the church over here in Oshtemo, and then I don't know what became of that, but I actually also got a telephone call from a guy who wanted me to come and party with him, and he was at work and told me where, and he was the minister of the church, one of the big Third Reformed churches in Kalamazoo. We both got on our hands and knees a little bit and partied in the choir room and partied with a Third Reformed minister, which when I was young, I thought, oh my God, the school teachers and the ministers were just special people. But the women that were old maids were all lesbians, and the guys that were single were gay. I mean, when they were teachers when I was growing up, and they still are. But there was college fellas that when I moved here, before they were coming, and they arranged a drag show to come to my shop, and I had a main house and then a garage building with a shop in it, and the drag show was in the place out back, and we did it all up grand. We had galley parking. We had a big mowed grass backyard. My guys were out parking cars and theater guests, and we had set up bar out in one room that was during intermission, and it was just really fun, wild. But Mother and Dad were familiar with being gay because my mother's brother was gay, and Mother would cook food and serve them all. We slept here, there, and everywhere, all over the place for the guys from Detroit that put on the show. We used to do wild, fun things. One of the first things, I had a party, and it was a Halloween party. We had a bonfire, and David Matheny came in a pink ball gown, and my dad was a volunteer fire department, and it was just down the street. And David was out running around the fire in that chiffon dress, and Dad says, "Oh my God, what if he catches on fire? We have to call the fire department." And all my fire buddies come and see all these gay fellas out here in the backyard. But another time, a friend of mine and I, when you went to the Oval Beach at Saugatuck, that was the 4th of July outing. That was really something. And we would go and one year I made a tent. It was a red velvet with gold trim and poles and everything. Had an Oriental rug for the bottom of it. And we set it all up in the backyard to see how it was going to go together. And a little neighbor kid was there, and Dwayne was a real flaming queen, and he said, the little boy came over and he said, well, what's going on over here? He says, oh, we're going to have a dancing girl. She's got 2 Band-Aids and a cork. And he comes sneaking in, hauling, looking for the girl with the 2 Band-Aids and a cork. And she never showed. But then Bob Amidon and I, who was one of the ones that I really had the pots for, we toted all of his stuff. Miles, it would seem like, to the beach because it was so crowded. It was a long, long walk with this tent and this Oriental rug and the whole damn works. And we set it up, and we were real popular. The next year, Queens from Chicago had built a Cleopatra's barge, and they had oarsmen and one of the queens up on the thing like a figurehead. They were out doing our party from the year before. So an awful lot of crazy stuff. Friends are our most valuable possession. All this other stuff is just, somebody had it in the past, I have it now, and somebody will have it in the future. It's just all a passing thing. But your friends are the most valuable thing that there is.